It's now a nationwide strike by oil workers in Nigeria has paralyzed the nation's energy sector since Monday morning. Now, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association, otherwise known as PENGASAN, has shut down operations at key agencies including the National Oil Company NNPCL. The union is protesting the dismissal of about 800 workers at the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. It has ordered a halt to all crude oil and gas supplies to refineries. Now, the strike has raised fears of severe fuel shortages and potential blackouts across the country. An emergency meeting is being held by the Labour Minister in an attempt to resolve the crisis. Now, we now take some expert analyses of the situation and how best to resolve the impasse between the Dangote Refinery and the Workers' Union. Oil and gas expert Olabode Sowunmi joins us today. I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday. Let's get it started. What do you make of this particular impasse right now between PENGASAN and Dangote Refinery?
Okay, thank you for having me. I think you hit the nail on its head when you said an impasse between Dangote and the union. But it's an impasse between Dangote and its workers, for which the union is representing the workers or doing a collective bargaining on behalf of the workers. While it is true that the Dangote refinery presents a sufficient chunk of what we consume, its issues does not necessarily translate to the issues of the whole industry. So that's why the unions are not having issues with other parts of the industry, but with the Dangote refinery itself. And the issues are a bit fundamental, and which is why it has attracted other people, including the Trade Union Congress. Because at the root of it is the union fundamental issues of the welfare of its members and their ability and right to collective bargaining. So that really is what is at play.
All right, if you say that's what at play, I want to find out, because when you look at unionism in Nigeria, it's meant to be a means to an end. But the end is never in sight. You look at the Nigerian, you look at those from the university workers, for example. Then you also look at the Doctors Association and several others. They've raised more dust than actually looking at for his workers and getting conclusive end, because over the years we've seen it, all this stall, so to speak.
Okay, so I think there are some fundamental issues which may not be considered. The oil and gas industry is significantly different from those industries that you've mentioned for a number of reasons. Oil accounts for 90% of our forex. It accounts for a lot of our income. The members of that industry are significantly well paid more than the others. And that, if you compare that with, say, the lecturers, the private universities are paid better than those who are in government. The reverse is the case in the oil and gas industry. So the people who work with government, in this case the NNPCL, are significantly paid in multiples of what those in the Dangote refinery are paid. So it is not to be misunderstood why they want to be part of the union. In the case of the universities, the private universities, individual lecturers choose not to be part of ASU, primarily because they have a better package than what is available there. It must be understood that the right to be a union member is individual right, in which case, and it is enshrined in the fundamental human rights. It is not even enshrined in the Constitution. In other words, any nation whose constitution and laws goes against this will be isolated by the UN as a pariah nation. And that is why there is a UN agency called the International Labour Organization, which is there to work and protect those workers' rights. Now, How the people who are local organize it is a completely different thing. It's like you talk about the International Standards Organization, which is responsible for standards. How the standards are interpreted locally is dependent on the national ones, in which case in Nigeria we have the Standards Organization of Nigeria. So how the local unions operate their activities with respect to the culture and the environment is completely different from the fundamental reason why they exist. And it is those fundamental reasons that it is at play. And I think that's that for that.
No, but okay, so now trying to probably maybe backtrack now. Look at it closely now. We've just mentioned ASU, we've mentioned NMA, and several others that time will not permit me to mention. When we look at effectiveness and efficiency in productivity here in Nigeria, the private sector far outpaces the public sector because of some of these bottlenecks. And when you look at that by itself is a big problem, because it's difficult to look at a government structure and get standardized output, all thanks to some of these bottlenecks, some would say. And that is why some have decided that in Nigeria, we'd rather stay away from these cryptonic associations and try to do things as we should, so that we can be more effective and we can be more efficient.
Okay, so under the law and under international protocol, the decision to stay away does not rest with the employer. It rests with the employee. And in this case, the employee has not chosen to stay away. So the idea that somebody can decide for the employers is part of the anomalies within the Nigerian system. And I call it anomalies because you don't find this thing happening in many other countries. And it's not totally the fault of any employer. It is part of the Nigerian culture. Nigerian culture generally, when it comes to employer-employee relationship, has a bully system, in which case the employer can hire and sack the next day, and usually there are no consequences. It is not that the law is not there. There is a law. But the culture of our people will say that, if somebody sacks you, why don't you go and start up your own company? In fact, if you seek redress, they will say, why don't you go and start up your own company?
All right, Mr. Sowunmi,
which is okay when
thank you for joining
we talk
us.
about.
It's unfortunate we have run out of time. I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday.